Welcome to a new episode of the Corner Office Conversations. Today I'll be speaking with Mr. Sharad Sanghi, who's the CEO of NTT India and a leader in the tech industry who genuinely needs no introduction. He was someone who's been an entrepreneur for a long time, almost 2 decades. And I dare say almost invented the data center industry in India with Netmagic. He's also a rare individual who transitioned successfully from being an entrepreneur to actually then joining a multinational post-acquisition and staying on, and has now been promoted to the larger role of integrating and leading a very complex entity organization in India. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome you to our show, Sharad. Thank you so much for taking out time for us.
Thank you, Jaideep. Thank you for having me on your show.
Let me start with the last 2 years. I mean, you've kind of had this whole integration process within NTT. Multiple companies have been brought together. And while all this has been happening, we've had the small matter of everything being hit by COVID, which has caused huge personal challenges, medical challenges, and also, of course, business challenges. So when you look back at the last couple of years, how's the journey been?
Jaideep, that's an excellent question. The journey has been very exciting. NTT in India ended up merging 3 key businesses. We first started about 2 years back, as you rightly said, of merging the network business along with the data center business. These were 2 very successful platforms that NTT has worldwide. NTT is one of the top 3 players in the data center segment in the world, and also one of the largest IP backbone providers in the world. So we started with the integration of the platform business, and then we ended up doing more recently in January, we started the integration of our NTT India business, which was the system integration and managed services business. So this journey, and of course, as you rightly said, COVID came up with its own set of challenges. Fortunately, as a data center provider, we were classified as an essential services company, and therefore we were able to keep our operations run seamlessly. But of course, it was a lot of challenges for our staff who had to keep all customer infrastructure up and running. Many of them braved COVID. In the second wave, we have over 180 frontline workers who contracted COVID, and unfortunately, a couple of casualties as well. So it's been challenging to say the least. Loss of life is never easy. But the good news is that from a client perspective, we've not allowed their businesses to suffer. On the contrary, we brought in security and efficiency to most of our clients in these challenging times. The reason for the integration, Jaideep, was we had a complementary set of services. So we had the network business with the NLD, ILD, and SD-WAN offerings, and the ISP offering. We had the data center and cloud business, and we also had the system integration and managed services and managed security services business. So these kind of cover an end-to-end spectrum for our over 3,500 corporate clients. And as a result, not only now we've cross-skilled our teams of the respective organizations. So we have now a sales team and a solutioning team that can really provide end-to-end solutions to our clients. And also, obviously, with the integration, we don't have to spend as much on the back end. So this has resulted both in higher sales in the front end and lower costs at the back end. So that was the objective, and we are well on our way to realizing that.
No, and also, our own research that we do in our Edge Insights practice is telling us that just the cloud market this year in India is going to expand to almost, north of $2.5 billion, almost $3 billion here. And which is a mix of obviously public and private and so on. And clearly NTT as a whole is well placed to leverage that with its integrated value proposition. So best of luck with that. But let me now kind of make you maybe rewind your mind a little bit. 2 decades ago, I would imagine most people wouldn't have even understood what the term data center means. And you kind of hopped out of a cushy job, should I say, and decided to become an entrepreneur. So tell us a little bit about what triggered that, and what were the early years like in the entrepreneurial journey, especially as you were literally creating an industry in the country.
Yeah, great question, Jaideep. So what happened was I was fortunate enough to go to IIT Bombay, and then I did my master's at Columbia University, New York. At Columbia, I was chosen to be part of this project which ran the National Science Foundation funded NSFNet, or the first large backbone of the internet. And that gave me the experience that I still use today, right? To scaling out large networks, building, making the internet mission critical, or making the internet serve mission critical requirements. So that was the early genesis of the experience that still stands me in good stead today. But I always wanted to come back to India, mainly because of my parents, and also because I wanted to do something entrepreneurial in India, right? So in '95, I left. We left the US, me and my wife, and we decided to settle back in India. For the first 3 years, I did a lot of consulting because I had to know the lay of the land. Things worked kind of differently in India than they did in the US, and I had to understand what is possible, what is not, and what is the lay of the land, what is the entire IT ecosystem. In '98, I decided when the government, Vajpayee government at that time, announced the privatization of the internet. That's when I decided to do something where I could use internet for businesses. At that time, everybody was looking at internet for retail subscribers. People's valuations were dependent on how many eyeballs and how many subscribers they had, and nobody was really targeting businesses, right? So that's when I thought of doing this, and I was fortunate to to get acquainted and become very good friends with my current mentor, which is BB Jagdish, who really, Jagdish and Chandrasekhar really deserve the credit for inventing the data center business, not me. I only replicated what they had done in the US, in India. So I may have started in India, but really they are the ones who, quote unquote, invented this business. So they started what is known as Exodus Communications in the US. And that was the first real mission critical data center company. And so I was looking at doing something that made internet available for mission critical enterprises, and made so that enterprises could leverage the internet. And Jagdish was also looking at, just kind of left Exodus, and he was trying to see what he could do in India. And we ended up interacting and hit it off. And he decided to angel invest in me. And at that time, and by the time this happened, it was, I met him in '99. I went to the US, presented what I wanted to do. He kind of helped me fine tune my plans and decided to invest in us. And then, this was the boom of the .com. .com boom was happening at that time. So people could have a good domain name, right? And get a $1 million valuation, so that there were crazy days. People were investing in all kinds of businesses. And then
some things haven't changed, by the way, Sharad.
Yeah. So I was fortunate at that time to meet Neeraj Bhargav of eVentures, and they had a partner that had invested in what is now the largest data center company in the world, which is Equinix, right? So they understood. I was the only guy who was speaking the language that they were used to understanding, which is to build carrier neutral data centers. I learned this from Jagdish. And I genuinely thought that there was an opportunity because, as I said, everybody was looking at leveraging internet for retail, right? Getting end users to come on the internet, but not many people were looking at how do we make internet valuable to mission critical enterprises. And that is where, so I had 3 or 4 ideas, one of which was data centers. And that is where it got kind of fine tuned with Jagdish and Chandra, and then with the eVentures team. And that's how I ended up starting data centers in India. As you rightly said, data center, nobody knew at that time. There were very few. I think the only data center, mission critical data center, 1 or 2 were there, I think, of ICICI Bank and maybe similar bank, 1 or 2 other banks, right, where they had kind of done this before ~98. But when you talk to even vendors and partners, it was very difficult to convince them the kind of air conditioning you needed, the kind of, the 100% uptime you needed on power and things like that. So it was, there was really no expertise available in India at that time. Very, very little expertise. But I think
it's interesting. And so tell us a little bit, if I may use that as a segue. You were kind of literally, plowing the field as you went along, and sowing the first seeds. the first 2 3 years must have been, one big struggle for you. Any commentary on that? And today there are many entrepreneurs who are also doing similar things and trying to create new things and literally inventing industries or inventing new paradigms. What advice would you give them?
Yeah. I was very, I had self-belief in what I was doing. So I'll tell you where the struggle was, right? So I knew that what we were doing would genuinely add value to enterprises. I'd seen the initial success in the US, and I knew that this would work in India as well. And it was only a matter of time. So when we did our, business planning, we knew that we would be cash flow positive after it's a capital intensive business, but after setting up the data center, we would become cash flow positive within the first 12 to 13 months, right? And so we genuinely believed that this was going to add value to clients because we would share the IT infrastructure costs, and there's no way anybody doing it. A captive data center would always end up spending more than outsourcing to a third party, right? So we kind of fundamentally believe in the business. So that self belief was very important. But what happened, as you rightly said, the initial one was, of course, convincing clients who were used to touch and feel their servers and their data, right, that they should outsource. So that was one big thing. There was this notion of outsourcing becomes less secure, right? So that was a big hurdle to cross. But more importantly, within a year of our going live, the entire industry collapsed because of the dot-com bust. And for us, it was even tougher because Exodus Communications, Jagdish and Chandra had left, but the new management did some wrong decisions in Exodus Communications, and they ended up filing for bankruptcy as well, right? And that was not because the business was bad. The business was fundamentally a very strong business, but what they did was they ended up, leveraging very a lot, and most of the clients were dot-com clients that went under. We also had some of those challenges in India because we had some dot-com clients as well, and so there was a time where we reached where our bank balance was down to 20 lakhs, right? And this is a capital intensive business, so it was tough. But the good thing was that within the first 12 to 13 months, we had become cash flow positive. Now, because of this, collapse in the US, right, the access to capital for data centers became tough, right? So what that forced us to kind of innovate. That forced us to think, how can we, add more value to our existing clients? So if we're not able to build more space, how do we, maximize the revenue per square foot, right? And therefore, we started with offering managed services to our clients. We started managing their firewalls, their databases, their servers. So that's how the entire data center managed services portfolio of products started with us. And we gradually built this. So from 2001 to 2007, we were a single data center. We had a single data center in Mumbai, right, which is about a 5,000-6,000 square foot. Today, we have more than 1.5 million. We're doubling that to 3 million in 18 to 24 months. And, we're from being such a small player, we're now India's largest player. So I think that self-belief, fundamentally, if the business fundamentals are strong and you believe in the business, and, I think that's the key advice I would give to budding entrepreneurs. Yeah.
Build a strong business, focus on cash, because it doesn't matter which year you're in, cash is always
that is
king.
one thing that a lot of people ask me, look at every day you read in the paper there are 9 unicorns in the last 6 months and stuff like that. To me, right, profitability is very, very important, right? So I can't imagine, and hats off to all these new age entrepreneurs, the way they, I'm myself a user of services like, Amazon, Flipkart, Swiggy and all. So I know the value that they provide, but the guts that it takes to do billions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars of marketing before you turn profits, I just don't have those guts. So for me, bottom line is very important. And we built this business. We've been profitable now for God knows how long, and we continue to grow that way. So, so we not only do we scale the business, but we have to focus on profits.
So tell me, there are so many books one reads and so many lists one sees. The 10 Commandments of the Bible were probably the earliest things to follow, as it were, rules to follow. Are there any leadership principles that you follow, which you'd like to maybe share with our viewers, young leaders who may be watching?
Yeah, thank you, Jaideep. There are few things that I follow, and I'd love to share that. This is something I've learned over the last 20 years. So the first and foremost is empathy towards all stakeholders. So whether it's your employees, whether it's your investors, right? I've been fortunate enough that I've never had to lay off an employee in the last 22 years. And while obviously we if somebody's not performing or if somebody's done something wrong, then obviously we take action. But we've never had to lay off, right? From an investor's perspective, I treated their money as my own, the way I would want to have my money treated, and that's why I have such great relationships with my. Which even today I get calls from various investors that look, ever you decide to start a new venture, we are ready to back you. And so I always used to put myself in the shoes. So sometimes there was some you not always you have good time, right? Sometimes there could be something that you lost a large deal or something happened. So we would always be completely transparent, right? So that transparency with investors, I think that's another example, and obviously with clients as well. So always very when something used to go down, let's say customer had not contracted for redundancy or something, my instruction to the team was, first get their business up. If we have spare service, give it to them. We'll worry about commercials later. Right? That's the way I would like to be treated if I was a customer, right? So first get the problem fixed and then worry about other things. So that empathy is the first lesson. Then second lesson was surround yourself with people smarter than you, right? You should always beware of yes men. There are a lot of your direct reportees who will just say yes to everything. And really, I value more the people who can, because if I have a sales head or if I have a marketing head, they are bringing in a skill that I don't have. And so I need to respect that, and I want that to be, I don't want them to say, if I say something and they say, yeah, we'll do it this way. I would actually like a discussion where they would say, no, this is the way to do it, right? And I've been fortunate with the team that I've surrounded myself with. Third is never compromise on core values or ethics. There'll be lots of temptation. There'll be lots of things to take shortcuts, but never compromise. Fourth is agility is very, especially in this day and age, especially with cloud computing and the way things are evolving. You have to take quick decisions. Very often you can take ages to decide. There's a negotiation, you take very long to decide, and you may lose a deal. And you have to take quick decisions. Fifth is think long term. So sometimes you get a situation where short term you get a benefit, but it could have a long term negative impact. Let's always think long term, right? Sixth is if you have self belief, passion, and hunger, keep that alive. If you have that, which so far I still have, then 22 years also still drives me, right? So self belief, passion, and hunger is important. Simple one which you've heard from everyone is no substitute for hard work. So no cutting corners there as well. Another one is constantly upskill yourself and your team, right? And this is something, especially in our industry, if we don't do this, we become dinosaurs, right? So in this pandemic, one of the first things we did was we bought a whole bunch of Udemy accounts and we gave it unlimited access to all our employees. And NTT also had some learning platform like Decreed and others that we gave to our employees so that people could, in their spare time in the pandemic, not waste time, but actually do learning. I myself did some courses during this pandemic. Then one important thing is see the strengths in your team. See, every individual, you and me included, we have our strengths, we have our weaknesses. Now, it's very easy for me to find fault in, somebody reports to me, oh, you didn't do this right, or I could be, but I'd rather want to see their strengths and then help them on their weaknesses. But the strengths that the person brings in is much more important than the weaknesses that they have. And last but not the least, obviously take risks. As an entrepreneur, you have to take risks. But evaluate both upside and downside. I would not take a risk where the downside can wipe out your business and upside is only incremental, right? So take risks, but evaluate both upsides. So these are the 10 commandments, if you will, that I've come across over the last.
I think for my viewers, they'll be well advised to maybe rewind this portion of the show and just hear you again, because I think there's such straightforward but wise words, Sharad. So thank you for sharing those.
So we hired an investment bankers, we hired Credit Suisse, and they basically they ran a process where there were 10 companies that expressed interest in acquiring us. And one of the reasons that there was so much focus on us at that time, nobody had reasonable scale that was not already public. So there were the Reliance, Infocom, and there was Airtel and others, but they were like, very large companies that were public, and that we were the only nimble small player that was growing aggressively that was available. So naturally, everybody looked at us. And the reason I decided to continue was because they allowed me to do my own innovation. So today we have a team in Pune where we've come out with, even in the pandemic, we came out with 5 or 6 new product offerings. One of the benefits of the merger, right, was that we stopped new recruitment, because we said that, look, we want to first fully ensure that our existing team gets all the opportunities that there are, and we knew that we are growing. So rather than cutting jobs last year, what we focused was on repurposing our staff so that we could hire within rather than look outside.